Welcome back, guys. This video is not about whether or not cold air intakes are worth it for the money or even good for your car. Let's be real, if you're watching this, you've already made up your mind to buy one. So my job today is to give you guys a simple, all-inclusive, one-stop resource to help you decide what you want to purchase based on what's on the market for the 86 platform. I'm going over every intake on the market for the most part. I'm not sponsored by any of these brands, but at the end of the video, I will let you know which one I chose for my car and why. Couple things real quick. I've got like 12 intakes on here. Everything that you see is designed specifically for the second gen BRZ. I'm sure there's interchangeability, but companies like AEM or Greddy who only make first gen intakes, I'm gonna leave those off the list. I'm also not talking about drop-in filters or snorkels or anything that you simply add on to your OEM setup. All that stuff's great, go buy it. I'm leaving it off. Last but not least, if you guys like this format, I've done the same thing. I've done ultimate guide videos for the exhaust systems and strut bars. I'll link those videos here, feel free to check them out, but let's jump right in. Starting off, we got the Perrin cold air intake. This is one of the more affordable options, coming in right around $340. Absolutely, without a doubt, a true cold air intake. It's the only thing on the list that actually puts the filter itself forward of the front frame and actually outside the engine bay. This leads to lower air temperatures, and you also don't need heat shielding because the filter is under the bumper and not right next to the engine. Couple downsides, they use a foam filter here, which will break down over time, but as long as you maintain and replace it, you should be okay. The other thing I see is a long intake tube with a 90-degree angle, which can disrupt airflow a little bit. There's also an indentation in the pipe where the intake kind of squeezes past the frame. Looks like they had to shrink the diameter of the tube in that spot, which might affect the airflow a little bit. Perrin still claims gains of like 7-wheel horsepower over the stock intake. More importantly, I've seen several independent owners dynoing this intake at least a 6 horsepower gain. So I do trust that number. The consensus here is that it pulls hard in the low to mid RPM range and then falls down a little bit at the top, but still moderate gains. Perrin also offers a 5-year warranty, it looks like. They guarantee no check engine light. The thing comes in a few colors. Sounds pretty mean. We can play the clip here. Yeah, so sounds insane. That person had their mic in the engine bay, so I think it'd be a little louder outside since the filter is out front, but what a great noise. With all that considered, I'm gonna put this in A tier. For the price, it's definitely a solid option. Alrighty, up next we got the K&N filter coming in right around $400. K&N is one of those brands that you think of almost immediately when you're talking about intakes and filters. They make all kinds of filters. They've always been an expensive but pretty reliable bet if you're looking for moderate performance gains. I've seen several third-party dynos for the 86, most recently from Stratified Auto, who tested this one and confirmed it made power over the stock intake all through the rev range. With 8 horsepower up top and then 5 foot-pounds of torque pretty much everywhere. That's what they claim on their website as well. So I'd say this checks out. It's a good-looking system. The pipe is short, it's got a single bend, and it's got great heat shielding as well. It's got an open box that kind of gets sealed by the hood when you put it down. Pretty simple install, lifetime warranty. Again, they got a guaranteed no check engine light. Let's hear how it sounds real quick. I love it, I love it. Great noise, really opens up that induction tone. I'd like to put this in S tier, but it just looks so plain in the engine bay. It's honestly a really basic design, which it works obviously, but I wish they had a little bit of flair. So I'm gonna go A tier with this one, definitely a good bet. Next, we got the AFE Power Takeda Momentum intake. What a name. Coming in right around $600. I actually had a Takeda intake on my Honda CRZ back in the day. I'll see if I can find a picture of that thing. Didn't feel much of a difference. Definitely a great increase in the sound, but those cars were insanely slow, so I wouldn't expect much performance gains out of that. That being said, AFE claims 6 horsepower and 3 to 4 foot-pounds of torque on their website, but independent tests on the 86 and BRZ forums are showing that up until 4,500 RPMs, it's about equal to the stock intake with like the charcoal filter ripped out. And then above 4,500, it's actually worse. This could be based on their filter, their airbox, ton of different factors. Regardless, it looks pretty decent. I do like that Takeda logo and the window into the airbox so you can actually see your filter. Takeda also has a 2-year warranty. So let's see how it sounds here. So not bad, a little bit muffled with the closed box design. I'm gonna go C tier here just based on some of the research I've done. There's a lot of different opinions on this intake and not all of it lines up. So we're going C tier for now. Up next, we got the MST intake. So this is their version 1. I was actually considering this intake when I was first shopping around. I loved so much about it. The short and straight pipe directly into the air filter, the fact that it retains the mass airflow sensor location and how it filled the gap in front of the 8.6 engine bay so nicely. It really looks good in that engine bay. However, I was on the forums and I saw several people were getting check engine lights and throwing codes because it was running lean. That is a big airbox they have there, and the takeaway was that they didn't design the mass airflow area for the correct air volume, which threw some codes. They were claiming 6 to 8 horsepower on their website. Let's hear how it sounds. So honestly, it sounds really good. Looks great. They do offer a lifetime warranty on the heat shield and the piping, basically everything but the wearable items like the filter. But again, owners discovered that there is a way to get around that check engine light if you reroute your vacuum hoses. Still not sure if it's worth the money for something that has inherent issues. So for that reason alone, I'm gonna go D tier here and leave it at that. Now, that being said, MST might just be in their redemption arc. Up next, we have the MST V2 intake. It's actually cheaper right now. You can pre-order this for $398. They're expecting it to go out in July to the US. It looks like it is available in Indonesia already, but they claim a full redesign. It utilizes a shorter intake pipe with a single 90-degree curve and a conical filter in a closed box that looks similar in volume, but it also has an additional intake port on the left side there. They're claiming a total overhaul, 8 to 10 horsepower with a max torque increase of like 12 Newton meters. This intake does also have a clear window, so you can see your filter, and a pretty easy install process, I would assume. Now, obviously I don't have a sound clip for you guys. This one isn't even out yet. But what do you think? Would you roll the dice on something like this? MST is a great company. There are other intakes for BMW M cars and like the GR division for Toyota. They've got like Supra and Corolla intakes. All those have great reviews. They seem to perform very well. It's a legit company. So I'd be down to try this one, honestly. I'm gonna put this in A tier for now. Obviously, you know, this is just based on the info we have so far, but I am hopeful based on all the time and money and resources that they put into this redesign. So fingers crossed. Up next, we got the GR intake. Gazoo Racing themselves, the intake with the GR logo, coming in right around $540. Let me tell you, Gazoo knows what they're doing. This intake claims peak gains of 12 horsepower, and I've seen multiple independent dynos confirming 12 or more in some cases. This thing looks great. If you have Toyota install it, you get a 1-year warranty, and for the price, those gains are definitely worth it. This is probably the highest performing intake here, seriously on the entire list. Let's hear how it sounds real quick. Okay, so sounds all right. It's a closed box, so obviously it's gonna be a little bit muffled, but it looks amazing. It's even Cali compliant since it does have that carbon diaper filter. So if you live out there, might be a good option for you. I'm gonna throw this in S tier. If you can actually find one, seriously buy it. Availability is definitely the biggest hurdle. They're not making enough of these. And originally I thought Toyota might be saving it as like a factory option for one of their special editions, but they haven't really done a whole lot with it. So would highly recommend this. If I could go back in time and find one of these in a timely manner, I would have bought it for sure. So moving on, we got HKS coming in right around $630. Everybody knows HKS. They've been around since early 70s, I believe. They're headquartered in Japan. They got a ton of heritage and a lot of different performance applications. That being said, I challenge you guys to find any verified information on gains for this system. They don't mention exact numbers on their website, but buyers have said, you know, moderate gains. It's quieter than other intakes. They also have a $1,400 option if you want like a carbon fiber tube instead of the poly, but it utilizes 2 intake ports. It's got a closed box system. Let's play the clip real quick. So yeah, sounds good to me. Very tasteful, not crazy loud. Given the lack of stats on this one, it's tough to put it too high, but again, HKS is a very reputable brand, and you do have a little bit of street cred with throwing parts like this on your car. So I'm gonna throw it in B tier. Not much to go on, but I think it's good there. Up next, we got the Eventuri carbon fiber intake coming in at $1,495. Great intake. It's got one of the lowest air temperatures over the entire batch. I've seen a few dynos for this intake from a few different channels, and they're pretty consistently showing an increase of about 3 horsepower in torque across the entire rev range, with a peak gain of like 10 to 11 horsepower around 5,000 RPM, so really up top. That's pretty close to what they claim on the website. The website says 10 to 14 horsepower, 10 to 11 foot-pounds of torque. Also, that carbon shroud is beautiful. They have a reverse filter design that makes a lot of sense actually, and they do have it patented. So the kit also has dual air scoops on both sides that sit pretty forward of that front frame. So they're pulling in extra air like a traditional snorkel. Let's hear how it sounds real quick. Yeah, so absolutely awesome. I love that. This is definitely a filter worth popping your hood for if you're at a car meet. I remember the first time I saw one of these, it was on a GR Corolla at one of the Cars and Coffees here in North Carolina, and my jaw was on the floor. I broke my neck walking by. I was like, what is that and where can I get one? Even so, at $1,500, you really gotta want one of these. That being said, I'm gonna throw it in S tier. If you can afford it, you can't go wrong. Has performance gains, looks amazing, turns heads, and sounds pretty good. So S tier it is. Moving on. Up next, we got a more affordable carbon option. This is the Armaspeed cold air intake coming in right at $580. A little bit less of a popular option. Still gives you some flashy carbon bits. The intake tube is silicone and the airbox is aluminum, but they do throw in a carbon lid to kind of spice things up a little bit. The MAF sensor is in the same place, and it's got a pretty similar design to the KNN and also a lot of others that we've seen on this list so far. They don't list their exact gains on the website. They do mention a 12% increase in filter surface. Not really sure what that's going to do, but the difference in sound isn't really astronomical. I'll play a clip here. So yeah, sounds pretty quiet to be honest, but without any solid numbers, it's a bit of a toss-up. You know, not a bad looking intake. Obviously you get some subtle changes in sound from the OEM version, and you get some carbon in the engine bay. For 580 bucks, it's a little pricey for my taste. I'm gonna throw this in C tier, just not really my style. Up next, we got another carbon intake. This is the Infinity Design carbon fiber intake coming in at $1,270. A little bit less than the Eventuri. Very similar design though. Again, it's full carbon, utilizes that same reverse filter to increase airflow. It also has an integrated snorkel, but only on the right side as opposed to the dual intakes for the Eventuri. Now Infinity claims peak gains of 10 to 12 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and peak torque gains of 10 foot-pounds at 3,000, nice and down low. I've seen this intake on third-party dynos run an extra 6 horsepower and 6 torque at the peak. But more importantly, gains of 8 to 9 horsepower across the entire mid-range, which is really where you're actually going to feel it, that usable power band that everybody talks about. This is on sale on the Infinity website for $1,089, which, yeah, it's a lot for an intake, but kind of understandable for what you're getting. Let's listen to it real quick. I'll play the clip. Yeah, so love that sound. Yes, it's over $1,000 for an intake. No, you definitely shouldn't do the math on horsepower per dollar. You're just gonna get hurt. But if you don't think about the price tag, it's amazing. I'm gonna go S tier for this. Yeah, it's crazy expensive, but the design is an S tier. It sounds great, and it looks just as good as any other carbon option. Now, before I do the final entry on this list, I wanna talk about 2 other carbon intakes that I've seen on the market, the GruppeM and the Blitz. These are both very similar in design to the Eventuri and the Infinity Design models. However, the GruppeM comes in around $1,800 and the Blitz comes in at a low price of $2,300 and some change. These are both Japanese companies, similar to HKS. They've got great heritage and prestige. So if you want to blow some stacks on the absolute best products money can buy, take a look at these 2. I can't even bring myself to rank them because at a certain point you start looking around at like other parts you can get for $2,300 and you're like, what are we doing here? But that being said, I'm just showing you guys what's out there. Take a look at these. And finally, our 11th and final entry on this list. It's not an intake at all, it's just the charcoal delete. For those of you who don't know, the 86 comes with an additional charcoal filter inside the airbox of the OEM intake. The JDM cars don't have it, but in the US, we got it. It's an emissions regulations type thing. You can rip it out very easily. I did it within the first week that I owned the car. Just make sure when you're doing it that you clear off the adhesive around the edge, so none of that stuff gets sucked into your intake. It's pretty easy to clean, just take your time doing it. It's not gonna do much for the sound, but it's been proven to free up 3 to 4 horsepower pretty consistently, and you can basically get half the gains of an aftermarket intake for free. So, you know, it's probably one of the easiest ways to make your car faster for free, aside from, as a driver, losing weight. But that's all I got for you guys today. 11 intakes and a free power mod. Let me know what you guys think. For the record, I went with the K&N intake for my car. Kind of went that route for a lot of reasons. Obviously, brand loyalty. I bought K&N before, they always did me well. I like the simplistic design, I like the noise, and obviously they have proven horsepower gains throughout the entire rev range for 400 bucks. So compared to some of these intakes, that's a bargain. I also know people who would never spend even $400 on an intake. So, you know, it's to each their own. But if I chose again, I might check out that MST version 2 or just ball out with something carbon from Eventuri or Infinity. But at the end of the day, when it comes to intakes, you're typically spending several $100s on a performance mod that is next to unnoticeable. So really got to ask yourself, what are you hoping to get out of an intake? You know, if you want free horsepower, rip that charcoal filter out. If you want value per dollar, maybe the GR intake is the way to go for you. If you want great noise, I would say maybe Perrin, maybe K&N, any of those open box designs. And obviously, if you want to pop your hood and just look cool at a car meet, throw some bands at one of the carbon options on this list. They all look great. But whatever you're trying to do, start with some research. Ignore all the marketing buzzwords like turbulence and restrictive bends and velocity stack. What the fuck is a velocity stack? Literally just look at the manufacturer's claimed horsepower numbers and cross-reference those with a independent third-party dyno from an owner or a reputable shop, and you'll be good to go. But yeah, I hope this list helps some of you guys out in your search. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you like this format, again, like I said, I've got ultimate guides for strut bars and exhausts. Feel free to check those out as well. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Zach, and I'll see you in the next one.